this this webinar. It's been a long time coming, like David said, and looking forward to getting into this morning. So, as David mentioned, today's presentation will review the new Construction Management Plan SOP, or Standard Operating Procedures, including the new requirements and the resources available to the district. Before we dig into the details, I'd like to take a step back and briefly discuss what a CMP is and why it is required. First and foremost, the Code of Federal Regulations requires that all right-of-way, utility, and rail work has been completed or arrangements have been made for it to be completed. To comply with the CFR, the CMP defines the steps of construction that mitigate the risk of delays due to those unclear items. Not just the unclear right-of-way, utility, or rail work, but now pending environmental activities, state-owned utilities as well. The CMP documents are developed early in the PS&E development process and requires collaboration within the district and across several divisions, including right-of-way, utility portfolio section, rail, transportation planning and programming, traffic safety division, and environmental. It's important to note that the goal is to let projects without any conflicts, but TxDOT utilizes the CMP as a mechanism to let important projects that are not clear before letting. When districts schedule their projects, they should not expect to use the CMP from the get-go. A CMP consists of 5 documents: a memo, final certs, a schedule, TCP-based narrative, and a conflict layout sheet. Here we have a general timeline for the development of a CMP, beginning with the PS&E development. At 30%, districts are identifying their conflicts. At 60%, districts are developing their TCP and their schedule to avoid those conflicts and mitigate the risks associated with them. And at 90%, districts are finalizing the CMP. Early identification and mitigation of conflicts is key. Next, districts submit draft certifications 4 months before letting. The draft certs are used for the critical projects meeting, which is hosted by the design division and includes several other divisions and administration. This meeting is a holistic review of all statewide construction-led projects on the next 3 months letting schedule and allows for identification of those projects that may pose a risk to be ready to let. 3 months before letting, CMPs that require administration review and approval are due. It is very important that districts submit their CMPs to design early or on time, as it takes at least 4 weeks to review a CMP and anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks for a CMP to be approved. Failure to submit the CMP on time runs the risk of inaccuracies in the final PS&E, causing an addendum or other issues. If the CMP is approved, then the project can move through the letting process and into construction. In the construction phase, districts provide the actual clearance dates to the design division. These actual clearance dates are recorded and then available to the districts in our plan versus actual certification dates dashboard. Currently, this screenshot shows data from September 2019 to April 2025. 37% of the projects in that time period met their certified dates. I'd like to look at the bar charts on the right-hand side of the screen, starting with the top one. This bar chart is for projects that had a CMP. And as you can see, even projects with CMPs had conflicts that cleared late. But hopefully, because the CMP was in place, there was enough buffer to allow those conflicts to clear without impacting construction. On the bottom right are projects that had certifications that cleared within 3 months of letting. Here we had 200 projects that cleared late, and they were so late that they should have had a CMP. That's a significant amount of projects in that time frame that should have had a CMP. The trend is improving though. From fiscal year 2022 had 46 projects that were late and should have had a CMP. If you fast forward to fiscal year 2024, there were only 31. So we're doing better. All this being said, it's important to remember that districts should be using realistic clearance dates, especially with utilities. I'm sure many of you have heard this example before, but if AT&T gives you a clearance date of October 1st and maybe your utility coordinator is aware that AT&T is never on time and they're always late, then that should be factored into the clearance date used in the final certifications. And again, I'm not picking on AT&T, just first of the alphabet and typically on a CMP. And now, without further ado, here are the new CMP requirements. We will dive into each one of these individually, so I'm not going to read this slide, but there are 5 key updates or requirements to the CMP SOP. First, a CMP will be required when any conflict clears after letting. Again, a CMP will be required when any conflict clears after letting. This ties back to the plan versus actual slide that I showed, where we had a large number of projects that were clear. They were supposed to clear within 3 months after letting, but they weren't. And so here we are. This is the new requirement. If all conflicts clear within 3 months of letting, the CMP does not need TxDOT administration approval. It does not need to be reviewed by design FPP, but it still must meet the same documentation requirements as CMPs reviewed by TxDOT administration. The design division will, from time to time, audit these types of CMPs that are developed and managed within the district. Here's a little visual of the different CMP approval thresholds. So for conflicts clearing within 3 months after letting, those CMPs will only need the CMP approval certification. As we do now, any projects that have conflicts clearing more than 3 months after letting will still need TxDOT administration approval, in addition to the CMP approval certification. Even though there are 2 types of approval, there is still only 1 final certification and 1 CMP. If the CMP SOP was effective for the August letting, this is what we would be looking at in terms of CMPs. So the project highlighted in yellow, this is an Austin CMP project that's currently pending approval. It is going to administration due to the clearance date in April of 26. The new requirement is all of those projects in orange. So all of those in orange, had the SOP been effective, would have been required to have a CMP approved by the district. Our next new requirement in the CMP SOP are 3 new certifications. The first one is a certification for environmental surveys and permits. This certification captures any pending environmental activities necessary for construction, including archaeological surveys and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I do want to make everyone aware that's not limited to these types. These are just examples. We can expand and include any other types of conflicts that may come up that are environmentally related. We have seen the need for this in previous CMPs where environmental items could delay construction, and even in some cases, unclear right-of-way parcels can delay the environmental activities. Our second new certification is for state-owned utilities. The state-owned utility certification must list any unclear state-owned utility conflicts, including items like permanent traffic counters, weigh and motion stations, and ITS. This certification was added due to the large number of state-owned utilities negatively impacted by construction projects. And for anyone who's familiar with the traditional utility certification, this one looks much different. So don't fret that don't think that you have to fit this type of conflict into the traditional utility cert. There is a specific cert for these types of utilities, and it requires different data than the other, as you can see on the screen. Our last new certification is the CMP approval certification. This certification is required on all projects with unclear conflicts or unclear certifications. This serves as the district's acknowledgement that conflicts are accurately documented, that the districts are responsible for managing CMPs with conflicts clearing within 3 months of letting, and responsible for documenting plan performance. Our third update, as some of you might be familiar with by now, is that convenience delays will be excluded from buffer calculations. Since convenience delays may not be used by the contractor, or may or may not be used by the contractor, we cannot count on that time to allow conflicts to clear. Compulsory delays may, however, be included in the buffer calculation, but those compulsory delay starts cannot be used to clear conflicts. And as a reminder, if the district is using a delay start special provision, please make sure it's in the spec list in TxDOT Connect. And if it's a compulsory delay start, be sure to refer to the delay start SOP and submit the required memo to David Ramirez. The next new requirement is that for CMPs, we will begin requiring a conflict layout sheet instead of TCP sheets. The conflict layout sheet depicts all phases of construction. It identifies all conflicts at the time of letting. It will be included in the plan set for 100% PS&E submittal and include a note like the one in the bottom right-hand corner of this one that simply says the sheet is for informational purposes only. The conflict layout sheet allows the contractor to quickly identify project phasing in areas where they can or cannot work. It also makes the CMP development and review process much more efficient by eliminating the need to call out conflicts on several CCP sheets, making the process less time consuming and smoother. As a result of conversations with Claims Committee, districts also have the freedom to add an additional note to the conflict layout sheet if they choose to indicate the contractor should communicate with the district if they want to propose working in conflict locations, since there may still be some work activities that can be done in the proximity of unclear conflicts. Our last update includes a change to how we account for adjusted grade utility conflicts in the CMP. When we use the term adjusted grade utility conflicts, we're referencing items like water valves, manholes, and pedestals. A CMP is not required for adjusted grade utilities when adjusted grade utilities are the only conflicts in the certifications and there's no chance of delay in construction. Adjusted grade utility conflicts must be shown in the certifications. Whenever adjusted grade utility conflicts are commingled with non-joint bid utility conflicts, the traditional adjustments, relocations, districts must have a CMP, and the adjusted grade utility conflicts must be shown in those certifications. The spreadsheet here is just an example of a CMP that had adjusted grade utility conflicts and just what that data looked like. There's not many people, not many districts submit CMPs for adjusted grade utility conflicts currently. That wraps up the 5 new requirements. I do have a few reminders for the districts. This is more of a just wanting to make y'all aware of some of the requirements that aren't just in your face in the SOP. The first one being that the minimum buffer in CMPs is 5 months. All CMPs must follow the CMP SOP, starting with the January letting, and utilize the templates provided. CMPs subject to administration approval must include all unclear conflicts, not just those that clear 3 months after letting. The conflict layout sheet must accurately call out and redline conflicts and ensure that they are consistent with the certifications. We will, with the January letting, we will enforce the use of the new certifications, the 000 special provision, and the memo, the CMP memo. We encourage the districts to combine certifications into one PDF, and please do not edit the certification columns. Districts can add rows, but please do not modify the column headers or add columns to the document. Design FPP. On our Crossroads page, we have a website for CMPs. It includes all of the resource documents, including the SOP, the templates for certifications, the memo template, the 000. We have a sample CMP, and we also have a best practices certification guide. The QR code is there, but I am going to switch over to the website and I'll share the link to this webpage. So give me a minute and I'll get you all on the same page. And while I do that, just a reminder, the CMP SOP is effective January 2026. With the January 2026 letting, that means draft certs that are due September 5th will need to use the new certification templates. So this is the final PS&E processing sections web website on Crossroads. On the left-hand side is the construction management plan link. I've dropped that in the chat for everyone else to see. Here, like I said, there's lots of resources. We also have a link to the PS&E review and processing schedule. I'm going to briefly go through the SOP. Hopefully everyone's looked at it. If not, it's there for you to look at a later date. We have a definition section. Anyone who maybe you're working with a consultant and you need to explain what a critical date is or the difference between convenience and compulsory. It's there, it's defined. Buffer, the definition for buffer is there, so you don't have to hunt for it within the SOP. Good resource, especially working with consultants. Here we just have an overview of the CMP and the documents. We've briefly covered most of these, the memo certifications. We have a little bit about the schedule, TCP narrative, and then what I really wanted to show was the information on the conflict layout sheet. Here is where we say you have to include this note, and that in that conflict layout sheet, your conflicts must be identified by like utility name, parcel owner, rail, and the cleared state. So that's how they should be called out in the conflict layout sheet. We have a little bit on the review and approval process. All draft certifications and final CMPs should be submitted to the design FPP inbox, linked there. There is a chart here for key clearance dates to help the districts know the earliest clearance date that can be shown in the certification for any given letting month, and then whether or not the CMP needs to be approved, by admin or the district. There is a link in the reports and metrics section to the Tableau website as well for anyone who wants to look at that. Just for everyone's awareness, I'm going to open up the sample CMP and the best practices insert guide, and then I'll open it up to questions. So hang in there. We're almost there if you have questions, but feel free to put them in the chat as well. So this is just a sample CMP, recognizing that a lot of the time districts use go-bys. And so this is just a visual representation of what our expectations are. And if you haven't looked at the memo template yet, the memo template is intended to be just an easy plug and play, reducing the amount of guesswork on the district on what we expect in the memo. But it's essentially summarizing the project and the types of conflicts that exist. So here we have a variety of certifications, starting with the right-of-way certification, a utility certification, a railroad certification, followed by all of the cleared items that are cleared. And lastly, that the CMP approval certification. And they've checked off right-of-way, utility, and rail because they had unclear items for those. their schedule. They have their conflicts called out in the schedule at the top of the schedule, and their finish dates correlate with the clearance dates in the certifications. Their TCP narrative includes the required statement that the contractor shall not work in any affected areas with unclear conflicts. And lastly, this is the same image you saw earlier in the presentation. This is the conflict layout sheet. We have a legend that shows what the different phases are, and then the conflicts are called out in the red text with each of them called out exactly, as close to exact as we can with where the conflict exists. And then we have the note here, the required note that was approved by the Office of General Counsel, just indicating that this is for informational purposes only. The last document I want to point out, I think it's going to be a great resource for the districts. It is a best practices and certification guide. It's really just reminders of what districts need to do whenever they're developing their CMPs, things to look out for. For example, in the certifications, we have a reminder: buffers greater than 4 months are recommended for all conflicts. Clearance dates on final certifications and CMPs must be shown on or after the first of the month following the commission meeting. So just some reminders. And then for the TCP narrative, there's the note about requiring, the note that we require, there's a reminder for that, and then some additional language if the districts want to use it. Conflict layout sheet, just general things to look out for, and including the required language. The certification guide. So oftentimes our CMPs that are produced by our consultants, the consultants kind of seem to do their own thing, make it the way they want it. Hopefully this guide, you can give it to your consultant and say, hey, this is what we expect in each cell. Here you go. It takes the guesswork out of what is supposed to be in those certifications. And there's a guide for every type of certification here. So with that, I will open it up to questions. Well, before questions, hold on, let me back up. I want to thank everyone, like David did, everyone who helped with the CMP SOP, who provided input. It's been a long time coming, and we really appreciate everyone who helped out. If after today anyone has questions or needs help with their CMPs, I'm using me as a resource. I'm here to help. That's my job. So please reach out to me, and I'll get you in the right direction, get you going in the right direction. All right, now we can have questions. Josh Waller asks, does the CMP approval, I'm assuming the CMP approval certification need to be included in the certs if the certs are all clear? And the answers to that would be yes. Can the CMP be shared with the consultants? Are you asking, can the CMP SOP be shared with the consultants? Yes. Yes. There's a question that says, when would be a good time frame to start the CMP process during the PSNE phase? So really, I mean, the districts are starting the process when they start identifying the conflicts, right? You're developing your certifications, your TCP, your schedule, all along the way, so that when you get to 90%, you're really just developing your memo and finishing your CMP package. Does that answer your question?
Feel free to raise your hand and ask a question as well, or come on off of mute and ask. We'll go through the chat through here. I've answered quite a few of the questions already while Kelly was presenting. I think one that I did not get to is the conflict layout sheet meant to be one sheet? That doesn't seem practical for larger projects, and do we need to, or how do we address changes to the layout sheet? So ideally, the conflict layout sheet should just be an overlay of what your project layout sheet is at the beginning of the PSNE. If you have your various levels of proposed and existing utility, proposed existing right of way, and you layer your levels appropriately, you should be able to identify which conflicts are still existing, and then obviously use the call outs there. The example that we showed was just a single pane. It's a pretty simple project, but if you need to split that up to show two layouts, stacked on top of each other, you can do that as well. I know ideally with this is what we would want to see. With some of the larger projects, it might be a little bit more difficult. We understand that. This is our first go at what this conflict layout sheet would look like. This SOP itself, I will say, is a living document. At least the layout sheet itself, the certification templates, they may change, but if they do change, that will be sent out, by us, and what the expectations are and how those things should be used.
I got a question about that, if you don't mind.
Yes, go ahead.
So you said the conflict layout sheet, it could be just, it could be the project layout just pointing out the like the conflict, where the conflicts are and all that.
Yes.
So we're not, technically, you guys said you don't need the TCP layout, right? So technically we can still have the original TCP without changing that, but just adding to the plan set the conflict layout sheet. Is that correct?
Correct. So
no need to change the TCP, we just need to add this just to show where the conflicts are. Just wanted to understand. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So you'd be adding this to the PSNE, and then as far as the CMP submittal, we no longer need to see every single TCP sheet associated with each of the phases. We just want to see this as an overview for that submittal.
I see. Makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Still looking through the questions in the chat to make sure that we addressed everything.
If you have any questions, feel free to just come off mute and ask away.
Elias Bill Eccles in Austin District. And I
Yeah.
noticed that the memo template, it's got control link or content control fields. Is there a specific purpose for those, or is it just something that somebody thought was a good idea, or what? Why are those there?
Can you ask it again, Bill? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the memo template has content control fields, and I'm wondering why they're there. I'm not liking them. I guess is the reason I'm asking, because I'm not liking those.
All right, let's pull it up and see what specifically you're talking about.
So like Jason's name there is in a content control field. That one, his title, your name, your title, subject line, everything in that top portion is in a content control field. And I don't understand why we thought that was so cool.
That's what's being used.
Yeah, Bill,
Can
I
we-
think those are just part of, like, if you go to Communication Division's website and download the TxDOT memo template, that's what they're
Correct.
using. So that's what we're using.
Okay. Can I change them?
Sure.
Okay.
As long as
Thank
it
you.
looks like this, whatever.
Yeah.
Sorry, David, if you got a different answer, go ahead. But
I mean, no, that's
I
fine.
just wanted to
I mean,
let you know where they're coming from.
Yeah, like Jason said, this is a download the templates from the Communications Division. As long as whatever you submit looks like what is shown here, then, you know, I'm not gonna go in there and rain down on your parade bill and ask you where that control field was at.
Okay. I thought maybe you were using some AI or something to grab whatever the names of those control fields are and creating some report or some crazy thing like that.
Not yet, Bill, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Thank you.
All right, let's see, I got another question here that says, it was said the CMPs are required by the CFR. Is it reasonable to assume that this requirement only applies to federally funded projects? If we have 100% state funded, 100% local funded projects, then a CMP is required for those. So I will say CMP is not required for any local let projects. Any statewide let construction project, whether there's a federal or state funds on it, will require a CMP. Melandy Smith, she asked, will this webinar be available to go back and view for reference later? Yes, we will post this to the Design Division memos and emails site. So that will be available to everyone. We'll put it on our FPP section site as well for reference. Also, we can email out the links and the SOP also after the meeting's over. Let's see, it says if a draft CMP is never finalized, is a project still allowed to let? Samir, can you expand on what you mean by a draft CMP?
We submitted something last year. It looks like we never signed it.
So all of those CMPs, those were already approved. So you're good. Boom. Good point. Moving forward, for CMPs to go up for approval, we'll ask, the CMP does not need to be signed when it is submitted to design initially, but before we send it up for approval, we will ask for signatures then. To avoid that situation where maybe after the CMP is approved, they were chasing after signatures on the memo and the certs.
And we also have the CMP approval certification now too, that should address that.
Correct. All right, other questions, since we need only the conflict layout sheet, does that mean the TCP modifications, if needed, would be done by the contractor? Can you expand on that question, Amir?
Yeah, I think you answered the question from Ibrahim about,
Oh,
we
okay.
don't need, yeah, we don't need to modify, you answer that we don't need to modify the TCP. We just need to show the project layout or conflict layout where the conflicts are. So let
Right.
us say after you let the project and that utility not cleared. So if they need, let us say, to revise TCP or to work in somewhere else, is going to be handled by the contractor, or is going to come back to the
You're
designer?
talking about after the project is let and
Yes.
construction has begun, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, that'll all be handled as is currently.
I have a question. As far as the final plans that division post, is that sheet required in the final posted plans? Because between the time of 100% and the posted plans, it could be dated. Utility could be clear at that point. So is it required in the final posted plans?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat that have not been answered already. Does anybody else have any other questions regarding
You
the
said-
CMP?
You said if the utility cleared is still required to be listed on the CMP before, like if it's cleared before the. I'm not like the last question. I got confused when you said yes. Can you please explain that again?
So I believe Randy was asking if a conflict clears prior to the PSNE being posted, would we still need to have the layout sheet submitted? And if there's opportunity to update the conflict layout sheet before we post the plans, then yes, we would need to update it. But once it's already, posted, then, then we could possibly do an addendum to fix it. But ideally, we would have a better understanding of what those timelines look like with those clearance dates. So again, this all goes back to communication and coordination with our utility partners or utility companies, and making sure that we have those utility conflict matrices, filled out appropriately, and using accurate or at least more realistic clearance dates, so that we don't necessarily run into that issue.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Building off of this conversation, just a reminder, if a project has an estimated clearance date prior to or within the month of letting, the clearance date in the final certifications and CMP must be moved to the first day of the following month. So for example, September projects, if you have anything that's not clear for your September projects, the clearance date on your certification should be no earlier than 10/1. Which, if the CMP SOP were effective for that letting, it would require a CMP.
Okay. Do we have any other questions regarding this SOP?
Someone asked, does it have to be signed and sealed by an engineer, or can we just say like for contractors' information only on the sheet? Do we have to
It
sign
should
them?
be signed. It should be signed and sealed. The example that we have there shows the signed and sealed signature as well. The key thing on that is to make sure that we include that note on that layout sheet. Okay. All right. Well, with that, if anybody has any other questions regarding this SOP, Kelly's information is on the slideshow that we'll be sending out, that PowerPoint. You can also CC me or email me with any questions. In any case, again, I want to reiterate all the thanks to everybody that was involved in the development of this SOP. Like I said before, it was a long time coming, and we used a lot of resources to get us to this point. So yes, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Kelly or myself. With that, I'll give 11 minutes back to y'all. Y'all have a good rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.